Welcome, my 371 subscribers, everyone who loves stories about honorable last stands like the fall of Constantinople, Thermopylae, Battle of Masada, and the fall of Cadia. Everyone who just doesn't hate Orange Cassidy based on the things he's done and the things people believe he's still doing, when literally he's being a serious boy right now. And everyone who has too many damn deadlines and has their hobbies pushed to the backside. Welcome to my review of AEW Dynamite for the April 12th show. Let's begin. So it's that dreaded time of year again for most wrestling promotions. Yes, it's the NBA playoffs. With the NFL, at least the games only happen like on Sundays, on Fridays, on Mondays. But with the NBA, it can be every day. And for the love of God, it hits AEW Dynamite. So ratings took a dip this week, but not as much as I thought that it would. It maintained, technically. It didn't drop to like 700k, but yeah, that's like an alright number. It had to go up against the Bulls-Raptors game, and that's like the third biggest team in the league, so I guess maybe better luck till after the playoffs. So what teams are you rooting for? In the East, I want the Bucks to make the finals, but in the West, light the beam. And I want them to be champions. So yeah, I don't think that's going to happen, but that's why you have backups. As for the Thunder, I just want them to do well. And so yeah, for the segment-by-segment breakdown, according to Brandon Thurston, you should check out his graph. It's a really good graph that I'm not going to post here. But Dynamite managed to do 866,000 with a demo of 0.28. So this is down by 11k from last week. But the graph is pretty straight. Like, I've seen graphs drop down a lot lower and a lot more drastic than this one does. The problem is they don't draw the million to start, so I think it might have been cool if they opened the show with Orange and Buddy instead. Swerve and Darby I think should have been the main event, just because of match quality, and based on what happened in that main event, that match should have been on Rampage. The Jeff Hardy return doesn't quite do anything much. And yeah, like I said, better luck after the playoffs. So yeah, the first match of the night is Darby Allin versus Swerve Strickland. So even when watching Dynamite, like live, I didn't think this was the best one to start the show. We saw Jungle Boy start with a lot more famous name in Matt Hardy, and that didn't help much. Swerve hasn't gotten a lot of exposure till now. He was on Rampage a lot, wasting away with Trench and Parker. That was a terrible idea. Darby's the second best pillar, and in-ring might be the most fun to watch, but I don't know if he can fill a stadium. His size limits him. But the match itself was really good, and if done on a normal week, would have, I think, done better in the ratings. This match was a Darby match that Swerve obliges. It's a car crash storyteller, featuring the sick bumps of Darby, and just like borderline skirting the rules. They would do everything that would seem like it's DQable, but not actually do something that would DQ them, of course. Because there was this interesting moment where Swerve takes off Darby's belt and then hits him. For some people online, they would think this is a DQ, plain and simple. But it's not a DQ if you take it off someone, right? If like it's a part of their gear. It's just like when, I think it was Brody King, who choked Darby with his own necklace. I think like through his mouth, and then it snapped, pretty much like what happens here. But the necklace doesn't snap. Isn't a DQ only supposed to happen if it's a foreign object? And having it be part of someone's gear isn't that foreign. So yes, it's a car crash because of all the bumps, but it's a storyteller because Swerve injures himself on, I think, an outside dive, but he keeps control. Swerve works on Darby's head with some unique dominate spots that is more entertaining than what we usually get in this phase of the match. Because in the usual structure, it's evenly matched, heel dominates, there's a comeback, and then the face either wins or loses. And in that middle part, Swerve makes it as interesting as he could by doing things like a torture rack, where he does lunges and knee bumps that would suck for his knees. The waist lock doesn't work that much though. Control is ceded when Swerve re-injures his ankle, and then Darby works on the ankle in the weirdest, most fetishistic way, because he tries to bite it. And yeah, I guess the ankle gets displaced, but the biting of the flesh isn't gonna help, and there's socks there, so terrible spot here. But thankfully, he instead does a heel hook. And I hate it when someone says that limb work should only be done by the heels. I actually saw this on Twitter, and it's a reminder of why I should just delete my Twitter. It doesn't help with the channel, does a number on the mental health, and I see the stupidest opinions get retweeted and liked so much. Why the hell should a babyface not use his brain, not use common sense, and be dumb just because your heroes in the past used to be like that? I mean, these guys, these wrestlers aren't fucking stupid. They studied the same thing, and I think that even to the most normal of people, to the most casual of viewer, like even you and me here, if you see someone hurting, like in a specific spot, you fucking go for that spot. Having babyfaces not take advantage of these things is so fucking stupid, and it would make your babyface look fucking stupid. It would make them look stupider than a Hangman Page going 1v3 against BCC. I didn't think that people thought that being smart or having common sense was a bad guy trait that shouldn't be emulated by kids. It actually explains a lot on the thought process of these dumbasses. But yeah, now for the climax and the finish. A lot of things happen, there are so many moving parts, but ultimately I think the right man won. But it's sort of detrimental to the overall feud, like to the main feud that Swerve is in, and that's against Keith Lee. I don't think he should be losing, especially with his new group helping him. That's why I think it would have been better not to book them against each other or have Darby win via DQ. Now the victory that Keith will get in that singles match is diminished. The Mogul Embassy, like Brian Cage, showed up to help, but it doesn't even work. They did the best they can to protect him by having that foot play a factor, even with that pin. With that injured foot, it'll be harder to get out of the Last Supper. I think that's what Darby calls it. That thing has had a pretty good success rate. Worked against Malachi, now worked against Swerve Strickland. But yeah, if I only cared more about Swerve and Keith's feud, I would have docked more points from this match. But that feud's pretty much dead, and I think they should move on from it. But yeah, either way, great match. I think it's pay-per-view undercard. And I'm still conflicted which match to give Match of the Night to. They're not overly spectacular. They pretty much have the same finishes. But which one deserves it more? This match or Buddy vs. Orange? Find out later. So for top spots, number 3 is where Darby goes for a coffin drop, but Swerve escapes and then just like that, changes direction, goes for an outside dive instead. Very smart here from Darby. Number 2 is the momentum German suplex by Swerve on Darby. It's like a running coffin attack, but Swerve turns it into a German suplex. And number 1 spot is the Poison Rana from the apron to the outside, to the fucking floor. And this is spot of the night. But for the post-match, MJF comes in, and he goes for the same approach that he goes for with Jungle Boy. He sets them up and knocks them down. MJF puts Darby over with a previous encounter, but then buries him with that same referenced encounter with how Darby was beaten, and that was a headlock takeover. Low blow before that, but still, headlock takeover, pin, and then Max wins. I think Darby even referenced this in the 4-way promo with all of the pillars. What a thing to build the feud on. A headlock takeover. But Darby comes back with the babiest of babyface promos. He goes so real when he talks about material things don't matter, relationships do, family does. And honestly, who the hell ever brings up buying their parents a house and helping them retire? Like honestly, who does that in wrestling? It's always, let me tell you something, I'm gonna beat you for that championship. Yeah, tell us something real, like someone in their position would actually do. It's always some righteous BS, some honorable shit, and the other guy who pretty much does this was a heel for most of his run in Kevin Owens. Or when AJ Styles did it, he would get triggered in the mere mention of his child. So this promo is as real as like Danielson's Go Home promo from Revolution, and as real as Carl Anderson's hot Asian wife. That was really good too. Then it becomes a fight about morals, but MJF doesn't care about morals, and he proceeds to put over the AEW title the hardest it ever has been put over. MJF is Griffith, and he says the line, "Do you think I'm not keenly aware that if the afterlife exists, that I might not end up in heaven. And as long as the AEW title comes with him, it doesn't matter which way he goes. There's no way this guy's leaving. Like, this is the most pro AEW shit I've ever heard. I've never heard of someone damning himself to hell and that it would be fine as long as it's with the AEW title. Never has a championship been put over this hard in like religious levels. We get a Sting call out and then this guy just tears it up on the mic. He goes about dismantling the point that Max has about the daddy daycare thing. He declares himself a cheerleader and then throws pom-poms at Max. He throws about like I think 4 and then lets it slip with a Sting Joker expression on his face. Cody daycare. And he brings up Cody and shuts MJF up. He goes through his history calling out Ric Flair, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall looking up at the sky. And yeah, that was some pretty tear-inducing stuff. More Scott Hall than Kevin Nash because Kevin Nash doesn't even watch the show. And then he confirms that he's not going after the belt. So MJF retiring Sting, those theories, pretty much dead. But he puts over Darby hard and declares him the next AEW World Champion. This ends with Darby doing the same and then getting spat on in the face by Max to give him back some heat. So yes, segment of the night, no doubt about it. And this wasn't even because of Max. Darby and Sting, although it took both of them, they made this segment of the night. So for me, Darby's on that level already, on like the main event level. Problem is the other two pillars are not, like clearly are not yet there. They'll need to do a lot of catching up. That I think Sammy can do, but Jungle Boy, not much faith there, he needs to do a lot. So after this is Powerhouse Hobbs versus Silas Young. And this starts with like a setup to a story event. That's pretty cool, I think, on its own. But I don't agree with it in the storyline and in the booking. Like, it's okay. I would rather Wardlow not be in a feud with Powerhouse Hobbs. I'd rather not have either of them lose. But it's okay if it's done perfectly. But I don't have that much faith in the handling of the TNT Championship when it's not with Darby Allin. But what happens with Silas Young on how he's squashed like a common jobber. Now, this pissed me off. Like, this was worse than the booking decision of having Wardlow stay in the feud. Silas Young gets destroyed. And this guy even challenged Hangman Page, the world champion, at one point. So I think it would have made sense, and I think it would have been better in featuring Ring of Honor talent when they don't get squashed. There should have been a match here. Dalton and the boys got squashed that 1 week, and now we have Silas Young. What are you doing? This is absolute BS. Worst match of the night. So after that piece of trash booking decision, we get a live feed of Wardlow destroying Hobbs' car, and upon second look, it's not even a good looking car. It's like a repainted Mañana from the GTA games. This was actually a pretty efficient destruction of a car. This was therapeutic to watch. Like, he systematically destroyed this car. He scratched off the right paint, he destroyed the windows in a couple of hits, and he didn't even try to stupidly flip it over with his superhuman strength. He wasn't gonna blow out his back for that. Instead, he used a forklift to stab out the rest of the windows. And then he flips it over with the forklift. This was the best part about this whole thing. And it should have ended there. But it keeps on going on. They find their way into the arena. Silas Young is almost powerbombed to the tables below. But then Wardlow shows up. They fight. They get broken up by some dark elevation wrestlers. Plus Pat Buck and BJ Whitmer. They bring Hobbs out of the arena. But they let Wardlow powerbomb Aaron Solo. Which doesn't make much sense. Unless Aaron Solo is just a dick backstage in storyline. And I guess he is, because he did steal Wardlow's title and gear, so maybe he had this coming. But he didn't break both tables. His neck clipped the other one, and I guess this was fun, if it wasn't for that. But I'm so disappointed in the direction that they chose to go with Wardlow. He should have been the one to challenge MJF at Double or Nothing in the anniversary of MJF's destruction. So yeah. After this is the Jay White and Juice Robinson promo, where they pretty much just introduce themselves. They're still the Bullet Club. Now, the Bullet Club Bang Bang Gang. They just flex on Ricky. Not much progress is done. I'm more interested with Ricky's reply and who he's gonna bring in to back him up. These guys have the charisma, but they should just move on and beat Starks, or at least try with the feud. This isn't New Japan anymore. The story and the matches need to be good, and there haven't been any matches. This feud, I think, is pretty cold, but we'll see how Ricky Starks replies, maybe on Rampage. So after this is Buddy Matthews versus Orange Cassidy. And it's awesome to see more House of Black on TV. And I think the right person won in the match in Orange, because the House of Black are already Trios champs. If they weren't Trios champs, I would have been okay if Buddy had the lower card title, while Malachi and Brody had the tag championships. The only way you can have a double champion in a faction is if that double champion is the leader. So I'm happy that Buddy doesn't win, and they protect him fine enough by the end. This match was a show stealer storyteller, pretty much like the first match. It even ends the same way. But yeah, the story here is Orange's right hand. He hurts it on his first orange punch attempt, and I don't like how Bryce Remsburg sort of body blocks him from pinning Buddy. I know it's established that like Orange and Bryce are friends. He even calls Bryce later to like get Buddy off of him, but this is still a match, and it's still fair game, and Buddy's down. So this part didn't make much sense. We take a long break of like Doc Samson checking Orange's hand, and then when Orange waves it off, Buddy just goes straight to the working of the hand, which was really cool. This was very characteristic of House of Black, because there were no artful submissions, like what a Marty Scurll would do. Just brutal steps on the hand, and this fun and weird submission involving the turnbuckle. The hand is well sold all throughout, as it's taken out of the equation. Orange never uses the hand again. The question then becomes, how does Orange end the match? He doesn't have an orange punch. I guessed a roll-up, and that's what happens. But they could have easily ended the match with any of the big moves that Orange hits. So for top spots of the match, honorable mention is the handwork by Buddy. I like the steps. I like that they don't rest hold. And when he does do a submission, it's on the turnbuckle. It's a unique thing. As for number 3, it's the beach break on the apron. It's an apron spot. It's the beach break. What else do I have to say? Actually, that whole encounter on the apron was pretty cool. Real good dramatic timing of the super kicks and the knees to build up to that beach break on the hardest part of the ring. Number 2 is when Orange Cassidy plays possum. He attempts an orange punch, but Buddy doesn't bite. Instead, he hits a curb stomp, near fall, and then we head on to the finish, which is a pin that I forgot the name of. Mousetrap, I think? Yeah, it's a mousetrap. And then for the number 1 spot, it's the triple DDT in different places. One counter DDT, another where Orange jumps from the top turnbuckle, and another one to the outside. This match, I think, was match of the night. Pay-per-view undercard. Orange again proving that he can go. He's a lot more serious now in his character. Like as seen in the match, he does his comedy stuff, but he doesn't do it for comedic effect. He does it as mind games. And he usually gets his comeuppance when he does it to like flex on people. Just like in what happens here with Buddy. So yeah, all of you haters can sit down. After this is a vignette of Luchasaurus and Christian Cage. Very short. Reminds us that they're there, but I don't know if there's a place for them. Maybe in a faction with MJF. But that would be redundant for Christian. We'll see. Maybe they'll lead the firm. Maybe Ethan Page will become babyface, but we'll see what happens. I don't know with Christian and Luchasaurus. They can easily end up just squashing jobbers, so yeah. So after this is Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends backstage, where the Best Friends challenge Aussie Open. It's clear that they're going to lose, but it's going to be a fun match. It's a new combination to go up against the Aussies. It's going to be real fun, but another loss for the Best Friends, I think. So after this is Ethan Page in the middle of the ring in a contract dispute with Matt Hardy. And this was a contrived way to get them out of this predicament. I think they should have just had Matt clearly sabotage the firm until they were fired. Because here there's like fine print shit and they just pulled this out of their ass last minute. I predicted that Matt would be like working the firm, but I didn't think that there would be like a fine print stipulation. I wanted them to piss off Ethan Page until he couldn't take it no more. Hardy and Cassidy get jumped by the Firm. Hook helps and then he finally gets beaten down. But then they add something in this feud that I think heats it up again. This is exactly what you need, but I don't know how to feel about the person here returning. Because Jeff Hardy returns with a chair. He looks pretty good for someone who hasn't wrestled in a while. Big Bill was very obvious here. But yeah, cool swanton, it looked good. Jeff can still go, but slower. But about Jeff returning in general. Should he really be here after that scuffle that he had? Can he be trusted to not fuck up again? For me, I think it's okay for Jeff to return, since it's his life. He will deal with the consequences when something happens. But I think even more that more responsibility is now levied on Matt Hardy. He has to drive Jeff around. He needs to keep that guy out of trouble so they can have that one last run, where hopefully they finally win the tag team championships. So I'm okay with Jeff returning since it's his choice. But God, if something happens, Matt Hardy, Tony Khan, and Jeff himself need to get blamed for this. I hope that Matt Hardy can handle the responsibility that he saddled himself with right now. So yeah, after this is the Kenny Omega promo, where he's all serious, talking about him and the Bucks, what he'll do to the BCC, making it obvious that he's not in the arena. It's a very serious, uncharacteristic Kenny promo, with that painting in the background of Don Callis and Kenny. But it was odd to have this before his friends match, since he doesn't mention Nakazawa and Cutler at all. So immediately this would make you think that, oh, this is pre-recorded in storyline. If this was pre-recorded not in storyline, he would have mentioned Naka and Cutler. But he didn't, so I like it. It foreshadows what happens after the match. And for the match itself, BCC versus Cutler and Naka. And this is like the top half of BCC, by the way. Naka and Cutler enter to the most generic of Titantrons, to the BTE theme song. And then they get jumped from the start. They get bloodied, and we get more of Nakazawa getting beaten up. That's why I think the crowd responded more to him. Like Claudio just dribbled the man's head on the apron in almost a comedic fashion until the blood showed up. I think that made sense and was a cool spot. And they got their asses kicked so good that when they got into the ring, the crowd was behind them 100%. This was like Krillin, Gohan, and Piccolo delaying Frieza's second form onwards for when Vegeta and Goku show up. This was a destruction. A heroic last stand, but they get their asses kicked. I like how this doesn't end as a squash. We actually have a less than 5-minute match that's substantial. There's a lot packed into this because Naka manages to hurt Claudio. Let's remember this guy used to be a wrestler until he became a translator for AEW. And when he forearms Claudio, he counters out of a Ricola bomb as well. The man got so over more than any time in his entire life, doing a heroic last stand match. He gets put in a sharpshooter. Cutler breaks it up by annoying Claudio with punches. This was funny, but I remembered the latest episode of BTE where it's basically Cutler's prep for this match and like to no avail. He ends up with Mox. There's blood all over his mask. We get a spark, but eventually it's taken out. It's put out, and he gets bulldog choked. Correction, Death Rider bulldog choked, then continued to get beaten up after. This was the best massacre I've seen on TV. This was the best massacre match in wrestling that I've seen so far. Because one, we have the blood, to great visual effect, but Cutler and Nakazawa, in how they moved, in how they sold the beating, made us root for them. They gave us those bits of sparks that played to the drama of the match really well. And I'm glad that they weren't just squashed. That BTE episode actually meant something. So yeah, post-match, the beatdown continues, but Kenny's music hits. He lingers on stage. He doesn't go at them just like Hangman did. And then the Bucks show up right behind the BCC. Super kicks. They take out Wheeler and Claudio. They hit Mox with a BTE trigger. And then this is it. This is the part that's so cool. Kenny's about to hit Mox with his toolbox execution style, but he's stopped by Matt. and then he offers up a screwdriver for poetic justice. And then when Kenny goes at him with a screwdriver, Mox leaves, and then Kenny stabs the fucking turnbuckle with a screwdriver, making it stick out for a great visual. And like, if Kenny was going this hard, it would have taken out Mox's eye. So yeah, so nice effect. Nice visual and nice implied effect. I love the direction that this feud is going. This is the best feud currently in the company. I think that if the two other pillars pick up their slack, I think this can be overtaken, but right now this is it. This even has the strength of having Kota Ibushi being involved, so yeah. I love this feud, I love everything about this match. I want to give it a rating of like pay-per-view undercard, but it was done more to serve a purpose. So yeah, well done here. So after this is Brian Cage and Swerve Strickland foreshadowing their participation in the main event. It's a good promo, but I honestly think that it would have been better if this didn't happen. I would have liked it if it was more of a surprise. I like the dynamic here though. Cage isn't the best promo, so putting him with Swerve, very smart. Prince Nana also has that accent, mwah, but this didn't need to happen. Should have been a surprise. So after this is the main event, which is Chris Jericho versus Keith Lee. And from the start, it was pretty obvious how this was going to end, since the Mogul Embassy basically spilled their plans right before the match. You can also put the pieces of the puzzle together. It's not that hard to deduce. So the mystique of the match is gone. And the match itself, like, if the match was good, the mystique being ripped straight off would have been alright, like in most matches. There's not much mystique in TV matches these days, but the match here was terrible. It was super slow, filled with taunts as well as double downs. It was like how Chris Jericho described to Shinsuke Nakamura how to like work a match, where they'll stay down, they'll let the crowd react, and then they'll do minimal things. This was that, but to the next level. I would have rather studied for the test that doesn't matter than watch this match. I would never say that about any match ever, even the Jade ones. But this one just was terrible. Like the first half of this was irredeemable. Second half had some good moments, but the first half just ruined everything. And it was in the main event, starring two top talents. Like, for me, the best thing in the match was Daniel Garcia. He did some hip swaying, he had a lot of charisma. He was a true sports entertainer in this match. This is the most personality that he's shown aside from managing Sammy Guevara. Jericho then sells his leg after he gets his legs up after Keith Lee does a moonsault. It still makes damage. He starts selling it, but they don't carry it over to the end. It doesn't play a factor beyond from that moment. So yeah, more could have happened, but didn't. I like the Walls of Jericho spot. I like the struggle for the bear hug. And I guess the finish was well executed. Nobody saw Swerve as he hit Keith with that, whatever that was. It left Aubrey Edwards questioning reality, but then counting the pin. Chris Jericho wins. This match was TV undercard. This was terrible. The post-match, for me, saved this, because we get a recreation of what Jericho did to Cole last week. So he comes in, Adam Cole comes in, takes away Keith Lee, and then gives Jericho the same look that Jericho gave him after the match against Garcia. And just the full circle storylines. Cole was supposed to manage Keith Lee in the WWE, I think. And now they're here, they're going to be tag team partners. It's a much better outcome. I can't believe people actually preferred him being a manager in the WWE than being a wrestler in AEW. That's just some stupid shit. But yeah, this episode of Dynamite was alright. It's like a bit above average. There's no like standout match of the year candidate, but that's okay. There's one worst match of the year candidate though. It brings everything down. But segments were all okay to very good. And we finally had one of the pillars elevate themselves to MJF's level. So yeah, pretty good episode. It has its flaws, but what show doesn't? So yeah. Stay tuned for my double episode Ted Lasso review. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.